The time is precisely 6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Anjana Dudamgoda and read by Ramesh Piris. The headlines. The President informs all-party conference to fully implement the 13th Amendment. The Prime Minister says the IMF is impressed with progress made by the government. The election expenditure bill passed by a majority vote. A record paddy per hectare recorded during the 2022 Yala season. 40,257 students passed the Grade 5 scholarship exam. In news overseas, more than 1,000 dead in Malawi's worst cholera outbreak. And in sports, the Australian Open, Novak Djokovic beats Tommy Paul. Stefanos Tsitsipas sees off Karen Khachanov. Now the local news in detail. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has expressed the Cabinet's willingness to the full implementation of the 13th Amendment. Speaking at the all-party conference held yesterday, President Wickremesinghe stated that the Cabinet was agreeable to fully implementing the 13th Amendment, unless it is decided by the party leaders as to whether or not the amendment should be abolished. The President noted that he is bound to implement the existing law as per the executive powers vested with the President. Accordingly, the head of state stated that the 13th Amendment will be implemented in full, adding that any member of parliament has the right to file a private member's proposal pertaining to the abolishment of the 13th Amendment. The International Monetary Fund Executive Director Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramaniam has said that the political will displayed by the Sri Lankan leadership to speed up reforms and implement difficult tax increases in order to revive the economy is highly appreciable, according to a statement issued by Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena's office yesterday. Dr. Subramaniam, who called on Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena at the Prime Minister's office in Colombo, said almost all the requirements for the IMF relief package for Sri Lanka have been completed, and the moment the final assurances from major lending countries is completed, the process would be finalized. The Regulation of Election Expenditure Bill passed in Parliament by a majority vote. The bill passed in Parliament with 97 voted in favour and 36 voted against. During the debate on the bill, the government refused to accept an amendment put forward by the opposition, seeking for the bill not to be applied for an election that has already been announced. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with more local news, the Department of Agriculture reports that 3,207 kilograms of paddy per hectare has been recorded during the 2022 Yala season. A progress review meeting was held yesterday over the expected rice harvest and cultivation in the 2023 season under the patronage of Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaravira. It was revealed that prior to the distribution of chemical fertilizer during the 2022 Yala season, farmers commenced cultivation with 248,000 hectares of rice cultivated. However, following a decision reached by the current government, steps were taken to provide urea fertilizer during the 2022 Yala season. Accordingly, under the Indian loan scheme, 65,500 metric tons of urea fertilizer was imported and distributed among farmers. At the same time, farmers resumed paddy cultivation, and the total area under cultivation increased to 512,000 hectares. A total of 40,257 students have passed the 2022 Grade 5 scholarship examination. Accordingly, those students will be eligible to apply for new schools and also for bursaries. A total of 329,668 students sat the exam held in December. The Department of Examinations said around 20,000 students who passed the exam will be offered bursaries. Meanwhile, applications for recorrection will be accepted until the 28th of February. The department noted that the highest number of students who passed the scholarship exam are from the Western Province. And that ends local news.
The mail is brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya.
Moving on to the main news story, the Controller General of the Immigration and Emigration, Harsha Elukpitiya, says the department plans to establish 54 centres island-wide to accept passport applications. Accordingly, passport applicants are not required to come to the Colombo head office in order to obtain passports. Instead, they can apply online using their fingerprint impressions at the regional centres. Arrangements have been made to deliver the passports to their residents. That was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Brush your teeth twice a day for healthy teeth and gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, your trusted brands in oral care for many years.
Supiriviki Ayurvedic toothpaste for adults. Kakulu Ayurvedic toothpaste for kids. 9 Ayurvedic ingredients of Supiriviki will protect your teeth and strengthen your gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, products from Siddhalepa.
In Watchlight this evening, the Ceylon Electricity Board says it is a challenge for the CEB to find money to provide continuous electricity during the GCE Advanced Level Examination period. CEB Chairman Nalinda Ilankakun told media that although the Human Rights Commission has asked to provide continuous electricity supply until the completion of the GCE Advanced Level Examination, the CEB is facing a severe financial crisis in securing the extra funds. The chairman said that although the officials of Ceylon Electricity Board had expressed an agreement to provide electricity to the Human Rights Commission, the Human Rights Commission had not yet informed him in writing. And that came to you in Watchlight. A bulletin of world news is next.
Coming up, World News.
Moving on to the bulletin of world news, first the headlines. More than 1,000 dead in Malawi's worst cholera outbreak. Tension so in Haiti's capital after police officers killed. Myanmar military announces strict new election law ahead of polls. Now the world news in detail. Malawi has reported more than 1,000 deaths from a cholera outbreak that started in March 2022, the country's health ministry said in a statement on Wednesday. Cases reported since the outbreak has risen to 31,241, according to the statement, while the death toll stands at 1,023. Health Minister Kumbesi Chiponda said in a press conference on Thursday that cholera deaths had multiplied within the last month. Angry demonstrations have roared through the streets of Haiti's capital, blocking roads and shooting guns into the air to protest a slew of killings of police officers by Haitian gangs over the last week. Haitian news agency reported that angry scenes erupted in several neighborhoods of Port-au-Prince on Thursday, and barricades of burning tires were erected in the center of the city. Myanmar's military, which seized power in a coup almost 2 years ago, has announced a strict new law on political parties that is likely to raise further questions about the fairness of elections promised by August. The law, replacing legislation from 2010, bars parties and candidates deemed to have links to individuals or organizations designated as committing terror acts or seen as unlawful. Back to the headlines of the world news. More than 1,000 dead in Malawi's worst cholera outbreak. Tension so in Haiti's capital after police officers killed. And Myanmar's military announces strict new election law ahead of polls. And that concludes World News.
Development News.
Moving on to developer news, the Colombo Dockyard PLC, registered under the Board of Investment, launched the second vessel of a series of 6 5,000 DWT Eco-Bulk carriers being built for Mr. Eco-Bulk AS Norway. BOI Director General Renuka M. Virakun graced the ceremonial launching, which was held at Dock Number 2 of CD PLC premises on 23rd January 2023, with the participation of owners, dignitaries from the embassies of Norway and Japan and Sri Lanka. And that was Development News.
Sports News is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Moving on to sports news, the Australian Open. 9-time champion Novak Djokovic steamrolled another opponent as he beat Tommy Paul to set up an Australian Open final against Stefanos Tsitsipas. Serbia's Djokovic, aged 35, overcame a wobble in the opening set, re-establishing his authority to earn a 7-5, 6-1, 6-2 victory over the American. Tsitsipas, aged 24, has another chance to land his first Grand Slam title after beating Russian Karen Khachanov. Meanwhile, Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina has another shot at a major title after reaching the Australian Open final, where she will meet Belarusian 5th seed Aryna Sabalenka. Rybakina, aged 23, won 7-6, 6-3 against Victoria Azarenka, ending the two-time champion's hopes of winning the title 10 years after her last triumph. And that was Sports News.
Go ekakthiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyameta set wenna as wahagena dakapugina habe karanna youth ekata niyameta set wenna friendship eka menna.
The all new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, 3 manufacturing plants of Seat Caloric Holdings have been awarded IATF 16949 certification, verifying that their products meet exceptionally high quality standards and supply chain efficiency, making Seat Sri Lanka the first tyre manufacturing group in the country to qualify for this prestigious international certification. And that came to you in business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekakthiyana youth ekata life eke change ekata niyameta set wenna as wahagena dakapugina habe karanna youth ekata niyameta set wenna friendship eka menna.
The all new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Economic news, courtesy of... For the 5th consecutive year, LOLC is awarded People's Financial Services Brand of the Year at the 2022 Slim Kantar People's Awards. As the People's Financial Services Brand of the Year, LOLC continues to place the customer first, and this has won the hearts, minds and trust of Sri Lankans, with yet another prestigious award as proof of this lasting commitment. LOLC, imagine the possibilities.
In economic news, Sri Lanka's Export Development Board has launched its flagship statistical publication, Export Performance Indicators 2021. The latest edition provides statistical information related to Sri Lanka's external trade and its contribution to major economic indicators such as trade balance, GDP and individual sectoral involvement for the year 2021 and 5 preceding years. And that was economic news. The weather report is next.
LOLC Finance is taking the power of innovation to the next level, winning 5 golds at the Technovation Awards 2022, leading the digital revolution with cutting-edge interbanking digital payments. LOLC Finance claims the overall gold award whilst also claiming an extraordinary victory in digital banking.
Weather report.
And finally, moving on to the weather report, the meteorology department says several spells showers will occur in the Uva province and in the Batiklu, Ampara, Polonnaruwa and Matale districts. Showers or thunder showers will occur at few places in the western, Sabrakamua and the southern provinces and in the Kandy and Nuwara Eliya districts during the afternoon or at night. And that was the weather report. And now to conclude this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. The President informs all-party conference to fully implement the 13th Amendment. The Prime Minister says the IMF is impressed with progress made by the government. The election expenditure bill passed by a majority vote. A record paddy per hectare recorded during the 2022 Yada season. 48,257 students passed the Grade 5 scholarship exam. In news overseas, more than 1,000 dead in Malawi's worst cholera outbreak. And in sports, the Australian Open, Novak Djokovic beats Tommy Paul, Stefano Tsitsipas sees off Karen Khachanov. And that concludes this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.